Happy holidays and welcome back to the 200 challenge, where today's score is exactly the same as it was the last time. 284 kilos off of my 964. Last episode was a little bit of a tough trip for me and an even tougher trip for my wallet. And we found some pretty extensive mechanical damage on my cylinder 1 as a result of heat damage caused by too much pre-ignition, which pains me, and it really does, because I can't blame anything or anyone else than myself for having suffered this. I should really have known better, but we live and we learn. So this now turns into two things. The first thing is a new hoodie for myself so I can look fancy. And the second one is experience, and that's something we all grow from. This time around, since I don't have the parts to finish this one up just yet, they're on their way in, we're going to look at cool runnings and the double cooler setup in the Frunk. Let's have a look at that. So cool runnings it is, and it is awfully important to run cool. With the 964, you typically have one oil cooler sitting here on the side. A lot of the real hardcore race cars, they install double coolers or maybe one really big one in the front. In my setup, I'm going to have one on each side, and I have a different oil system than what the traditional 964 has. So today we're going to figure out the last pieces of the oil system, and we're going to figure out how we integrate these two coolers and make a really lean, slick, and efficient setup for that. In one of the previous episodes, we designed the oil system for the car, and I've gotten quite a lot further with that since the last time we had a look at this. So let's have a quick look at what this funny piece sitting on the oil tank, what that actually is. So in one of the previous episodes, we relocated the oil tank to the frunk to change the weight distribution and also get away with some weight. I designed this component here, which this component is an all-in-one component that houses the filter, houses the thermostat, a pressure relief valve, as well as the distributor piece going out to the coolers. So the way that this component works is that the oil comes in here, comes from the engine there, it goes down into the filter, gets all clean and nice. Then you have the thermostat here in this vertical piece here. So if the oil is hot, it will go out through the coolers and then come back. If it's cold, it will go straight into the tank, and then it will swirl around the tank, beating all the air out of the thing. So I just got these in. These are the real pieces now. I just got these in from Aximec in Sweden, which has done a absolutely fantastic job with taking my CAD drawing and turning that into something real. Really cool, really psyched about the result. I did get some feedback after I did the last episode about how am I going to make a sturdy connection that doesn't break the tank. So what I ended up doing was a clamping connection like this. So you essentially sandwich the tank in between these two pieces, and then you bolt this one into this, and there sits a little lowering there. So that was really good feedback, and the way it sits right now is it's actually very sturdy. If I need to in the end, I'll put a little saddle down here if I see that this vibrates or does anything that it's not supposed to. But all in all, this is my all-inclusive oil tank with everything in it. Really happy about how it turned out. The machining work from Aximec is really fantastic. Really happy about that. And now with the oil tank back in the car, we're starting to get a pretty good idea about how my Frunk is going to look in the end. And I can tell you there's not going to be a golf bag in here. This is about how we take care of the oil tank. The next thing is distribution. And that is, how are we actually going to connect this with the other things? Because there needs to be hoses from this one coming maybe this way, going in here, maybe that way, going out through there, or maybe out here. And this is going to be one of the challenges for today, to figure out how we're going to pull the hoses. That, however, is distribution. Before we look into that, let's look at heat. And that is really good, and it's also only about how we really circulate the oil around the car. We also need to find a way to get the heat out of the oil, and that's done by the cooler, which sits up here. This is a bare cooler, there's nothing on it right now. There's just a fan here usually, and you have some other things around it. The way the cooling system off of this car works is you have the fan back on the air-cooled engine that takes the bulk of the heat off of the engine and just releases it to air. Then you have the thermostat and the oil that tries the best it can to regulate the heat, giving the engine as stable of a running condition as it possibly can. So if the engine is running really hot, the thermostat opens and pushes more oil through the cooler so that it gets a little bit more heat off. If the engine temperature starts dropping, it will close the thermostat, not circulating oil here. So this is how the engine does the best it can to keep the temperature as stable as it can. This works really well. However, if you really track the car, run it really hard, or run in a very hot climate, this cooler is not enough. I could see it on my car last year with the tune I had, that it was running hot. So I had to break off stints and maybe ease down a little bit because it was getting a little bit too hot. Several reasons to that, of course. And then this original setup only sits on the right side of the car. The concept is that the air comes in through the front here, it goes through the cooler, and then it actually vents down through the bottom of the car here so that it goes under and out in some fashion or some manner there. Several different ways of doing this. A lot of race cars are completely flat under, which means you wouldn't do this. You would find a different way of venting out the heat here. Some people put the cooler in the front and then vent it out through the hood. That's a popular and cool setup. I need to look at a few different options here before I can decide which one I go for. So while I don't know yet exactly how my cooler setup is going to look, I do know for sure that I want to have one cooler on each side, doubling up the capacity in some shape or form. On this side, this is typically where the AC condenser sits. This is the bracket that it sits on, and the concept is the same. However, some complications arise just as I put this in. I bought one of these AC compressor consoles thinking that actually it is the exact mirror of the other side. It's not at all. It is much, much smaller. It sits much, much closer in. Of course, you could modify this so that one of these fits, either by cutting some pieces away or extending it out. And I've seen all kinds of ways of doing this on the web. All of them look good. I have nothing against those solutions at all. I'm really looking for something that gives me this symmetry, and I want something that really takes in the aspects of building this car that I like. And here we go. Here is the full original setup with everything included. As you can see, there's a number of baffles around this to really make sure that the air goes all the way through the cooler and not around the cooler. You can see on the back side, there is an electric fan here. This runs when you're in traffic on a hot day. You can push your car to get this fan running on the track as well. In reality, I don't believe this does anything on the track when you're out running, because the air you get in here should really be a lot more than what this fan can muster. But it might help you in the pit. It might help you on a really hot day. I have a challenge for myself, and that is when I look at this, it looks complicated. It looks heavy. It does not have enough capacity. Speaking about heavy, I did weigh it. And this whole contraption is just about 6.7 kilos. So it is quite a beast, this one. I also did a little bit of cooling calculations, selecting different coolers, looking at what they can do. And the challenge I have for myself is I want to have a symmetric, good-looking setup that gives me roughly twice the cooling capacity of this at less of the weight. Let's see how we get that done. Okay, let's look at some of the solution variants. So one thing that a lot of people have done with great success is just doubling up the heat capacity, or almost doubling up the heat capacity, with adding one more of the same cooler. The way that people have done that is that the oil comes in from the thermostat to this cooler, but rather than going back to the thermostat again, you take this outlet and you connect that around the car with the other cooler, and then take the oil back and then back to the thermostat. So the oil comes through this cooler, that cooler, and then back to the thermostat. A lot of people has done this with great success. You almost get double heat capacity with that. However, this is hardly lighter, is it? So I'm not going to go for this solution. Let's look at some other alternatives. Another little aspect with that and reusing this one is that the original bracket that sits on the right side, it looks like this. Brilliant, great, wide mouth here, so you get a lot of air in. If you look at the one on the other side, I would have to find a way to fabricate something that looks like this to go on the other side if I want to get it symmetric. It's not super important to get it symmetric, of course, but it is important to me. Okay, and here is another alternative. So this is a Setrub 625. As I was calculating the heat capacity, looking at different cooler alternatives, I found that this could be an alternative. It has the same approximate cooling length as the original cooler. However, this one has 25 channels as compared to 22 channels, meaning that there is more surface area here between the air and the oil. However, the envelope is a little bit smaller, meaning that we have to push the air a little bit harder to get through this one than we do with that one. On the other hand, this one has more area. So with good efficient inflow, this one gives us more. And you know what? It's roughly half the weight. I don't know if this is the best alternative yet. Let's see if there is a symmetric, nice, lightweight alternative of fitting this one to the car. Okay, so now that I'm potentially going a completely different route, it means that I am not in any way at all bound to any of the preconditions I had previously. Literally, what I'm bound to is the geometry here, and I would like to use the mounting points here on this side, which looks similar on the other side, and somehow build a concept that really channels the air in through here, and then does not take it down. I want to go somewhere in that direction, right? So I saw a brilliant concept from one of the fellow enthusiasts online that put up coolers in this manner. That was much larger coolers. That was really nice. I'm thinking maybe I should put the cooler in this manner and then get the oil out, in through the lower one, of course, and then out through the upper one, and do an exactly same setup on the other side. Luckily, I have all the 3D scans of this car, meaning I can design something and make a mock-up in the computer. And then once I've done that, I can see if it fits onto the car and we can get a better idea for how this looks. Okay, so from one of the previous episodes, we 3D scanned the entire car, and this is so handy to have as you design something like this, because what I can see is I can see the clearance towards the front wheel, see if I'm going to have an issue there. I can see and get a rough view of how it needs to interface towards the car, and really get a feeling for the design. Once I have this, it's time for test print. And designing something up like that, looking good in the computer, typically means it doesn't fit on the car. So what I do to try to be efficient with that is I take a piece of the model that I've designed, I print it just like this. I see if I can make sense out of this piece on the car, seeing that the line actually fits here, it's about the right angle, and so on. I might print another piece, see that that one jacks into the right place, seeing that the line here is correct. And once I do so, I can build further and further and further. And once you've gotten that far, so that you know exactly how the geometry follows, then it's time to make a full kind of mock-up print, put this onto the car, see that you're happy with how all the mounting points line up. Also decide on where your final mounting points are going to be. This is what I came up with. It looks kind of funny. It looks like a skeleton right now, and there's two very good reasons for that. One reason is it's much quicker to print like that. Another good reason for that has to do with weight, and I have an idea on how I'd make something really cool out of this that I will show you in a second. Putting the cooler into this, we can get really a first view on how this guy is going to look. we can see a few things immediately. We can see that we'll have to have a very narrow coupling on this side, probably a banjo just going straight up there so we don't get too close to the wheel. I've checked this already, it's okay. We're gonna have another coupling up there. Looking at it from this end, we see that we've created now a pretty big opening here. It's bigger than the original one. And this one now is made so that we can divert the air from the bumper into this. We're gonna have it flush in the bottom, flush with the entire car in the bottom, of course. And we're gonna tighten this up so that no air can go through. And the same in this area here. So all in all, I think we have a setup that fulfills some of the criteria we set up. And then a little test fit against the original bottom piece. I think I can actually make this work. I should ideally move it a little bit further, which is positive. Then I get a little bit even bigger opening in the front here. So that's what I'm gonna do. And this is really the great thing with working in this manner, because you can really look at it and you get such a different feeling when you look at something in real life than just staring at your computer screen or just going wild, starting fabricating things. I really like that. Here's another little aspect I wanted to look at, and that's how this lines up with the bottom of the fender. Because in one of the ideas I was going to use the bottom of this mount to hook up a cover piece that goes around here and makes this part of the car completely flat. I can't really say anything about that right now because I don't know exactly where the bumper is supposed to sit, but that's an idea. If I do that, I need to make this a little bit extra sturdy because it's gonna have a different function than just carrying the cooler. As I was designing this piece, I was looking at really two different methods of manufacturing to get this done in a lean way. The first and most obvious one is just sheet metal bending. What you do in that case is that you design a big piece with a certain geometry, then you take it out and then you bend it to get stiffness and get the shape that you want. This is a really good technique. It's not something that I know how to do, so I abandoned this technique. Another manufacturing technique that lies much closer to my heart is slot and tab. So what you do with this one is you design it as if it was sheet metal. Then in the end you fix up the edges, so half of the edges have slots, the other half of the edges have tabs, and then it's puzzle time. And you bring it out and you put it together, and then in the end, as this is now self-jigging, it finds its home perfectly. In the end, then you can do some tack welds just here, just to get it to melt together. The structure, the geometry, the shape is given by the slots and tabs. So this makes it really, really simple. This manufacturing technique, however, requires you to really assemble it in the right order, because if you do this in a good way, then actually it becomes self-locking as well, which I have done in this case. So I need to assemble this in the right order. And as I assemble this in the right order, then I can actually get this to fit together, and it will be self-locking, and the amount of welding that I need to do in the end will be really, really minimal. And voila, the console is put together. A consequence of using this technique is that the plate thickness needs to go up a little bit, because otherwise there's not enough to make sense of the tab and slot. If it's really, really thin sheet metal, there's really nothing to give it any stiffness. So you go up in thickness. On the other hand, since you're water cutting this, you can put whatever geometry you want. So I've done all of this kind of skeleton work here to take weight out of it. It's not completely finalized yet. I'll still do a little bit of analysis so that I take weight out of the right spot. For this then to work as a real proper cooler console, it can't look like this with all these holes through here, because the air will try to come in here and won't be trapped. Right? On this side, you have the car body, so there's not an issue here. Here's the wheelhouse out here in the back. So this technique that I don't know if I invented it or someone else did, is based on that you make a skeleton here and then you plug the holes. So these ones will be printed or manufactured out of carbon fiber, and the only purpose that these have is to really plug the hole. Right now, as this is just a mock-up, I will just be squeezing them in there. They're made so that they're self-locking, but in the end I will probably glue these in there. In a very sophisticated example, these will actually add to the structure. That's not what I've done here. I've just put them in there to block off the holes. And in the end, you get something that looks like this. This is all plastic right now, and it's just for the sake of making sure that it fits on the car. This is going to be water-cut aluminum, so this will probably be gray unless I change the color on it. These will probably be dark gray, almost black, because I'm going to use this carbon fiber-infused PTG, which is a really super strong material that I'm able to manufacture myself in my garage here. I like this manufacturing technique because you can come up with really flexible designs, and it is self-jigging, which means you don't have to be an expert to be able to do a really good weld job. I've done this now for the Setrob 625. You could potentially make it larger. It would fit if you wanted to have a Setrob 634, for example, which is a cooler that is about this big. Let's put this on the car, see how it looks. And here we are, having fitted the cooler in a place that I at least am very happy with it. We have the hoses that are now going to be connecting up to the tank. The obvious choice that I looked at first, which is pulling them up through the first available hole. This looks good, very short path, run them on the inside. I was happy with that, to the extent that I went and designed this little transfer piece here that would sit just there. So the two hoses would come up, go in through here, and then run nicely on the inside. However, there's two complications with this. The first one, this hole only exists on this side. Okay, that's fine, can solve that, make a hole. On the exact inside here is the washer fluid tank. And there's no way to easily pass the hoses past that one. So, building on this concept, is there another hole with symmetry on the other side that we could use for this? And I quickly found this guy over here. I don't know actually what this hole is used for this side, but for the other side, that's where the filler comes in to fill up the gas tank. So I designed this beautiful little piece here that takes two hoses in and then gives them a little bit of a curvature and lets them out on the inside so that you don't damage the hoses going through this sharp edge. And then this one sits with an M100 nut like that, so that you keep it tight towards this one here. So I'm gonna just assemble this one in there. Okay, so we got that one in there. And now we have a smooth entry path for the hoses that won't damage them. We have a clamping point here as well. So now we just need to figure out how to connect these two together, and we're all set to go. Okay, this is what we ended up with. So it comes in for the transfer piece over here, nicely held together. Then we have a hose clamp here, supported by a clinch nut, and another one here, so that this looks nice and tidy. Maybe I need to put one here, not sure yet. I bought the wrong couplings to put here. I wanted to have these Banio type that has extremely short stack height, so that it doesn't interfere with the wheel. I've looked in my CAD model and it shouldn't interfere with the wheel, but you don't want to use up unnecessary space if you don't have to. This is the wrong dimension though, so I can't use this one. So need to get this done sometime. I haven't made the final mounting holes for this one. I still have a little bit of tweaking with this one. Once I do that, then I can take away this funny clamp here that just holds it in place right now. Other than that, I think this is it. Let's have a look at the other side. Okay, looking on the other side, it looks exactly the same, which was one of the goals with this entire exercise, right? We got the cooler in here, nice big hole here so the air can come in, come out here. We got our little clamp up here, so we're gonna pull the hoses. We got our transfer piece in there so that we can get the hoses into the middle of the car. I haven't pulled the hoses here yet because I need to make a new transfer piece. I printed that one out of a plastic called ABS and it's a little bit brittle. The other side I printed off of nylon, which is really flexible and super strong. And I need to redo this one with the correct material so that it holds up for the task. I'm not going to finish up the hoses here today, but what we will do is scoring time. You got it. So I got my scale out here. Let's look at the original setup first. Fan unit with cooler, 5.5 together with all of the other goodies, adding up to 6.7 kilos. Wow. What we've also forgotten about from the original setup is actually the lines between the old thermostat and the old cooler, which adds up to 3.5 kilos. And then we have the hoses and the transfer piece for the new setup in between the cooler and the thermostat. We have the couplings towards the thermostat and the couplings towards the cooler itself, weighing in at 1.4 kilo, and we need 2 of these, so it's 2.8 kilos, 4 hoses. And the new coolers are 1.5 kilos each, and the console is going to be 750 grams, meaning this whole lot is 4.5 kilos, totaling the new concept to 7.3 as opposed to the old 10.2, saving 2.9 kilos, which I'm going to round up to 3 kilos. Wow, this was a lot of fun, and it was also 3 kilos of weight saving. Not bad. A lot of work has gone into this. You can't imagine how much time it takes to really fine-tune something like this. And Frederick from Aximec, thank you very much for your support and your design advice and for the quality of the piece as it came out. It's really fantastic. Slot and tab design methodology is really cool, a lot of flexibility. I'm gonna order off the aluminum plates now so that I can put it together and do the tack welds and get all of that done, get the right couplings, finish it up. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, like my video. If you would like to follow the small little updates I do here and there, follow me on Instagram where you can see the small little updates I do in between the episodes. And if nothing else, see you next time.